Welcome back to part 2 of our Amari discussion. Last week we discussed book 1 of the Amari series. What are they called? Amari and the Night Brothers. And this week we will be discussing book 2. This will be spoiler-filled discussion with my friends Gavin and Amber Alise. Do you guys want to introduce yourselves again before we get into it?
Hi, I'm Gavin from How to Train Your Gavin, and I know I said in the last episode that I mainly do middle grade. I do, but I do want to clarify, I do read everything. I really do.
You do.
I read adult, young adult, horror, but I haven't quite dabbled into manga, but we have 2 incredible people here who are going to convince me at some point.
And you read classics too. You've been doing some classics lately.
Yeah, as hard as I find half of them, I've kind of got a trick to them now,
Good.
And I'm honestly loving them. I'm finding them so good to get through now.
Good. Amber Alise?
Hello, my name is Amber Alise. I talk about books. Specifically, I talk a lot about young adult and new adult books. This, though, is my first middle grade book, and I absolutely positively loved it. I am so hooked, and I'm hooked on this series. The second book was amazing, and I am so excited to talk about it today. I've also really been into mangas thanks to Miss Murphy. She really got me hooked on One Piece, and now I'm just like on a manga binge. So that is me in a nutshell.
She's a big One Piece fan, guys. Go check her out. So this week we're talking about Amari and the Great Game. We left off last week by saying that Amber Alise and I liked this one better. Gavin?
I like this one on par. I give both of them 5 stars. Honestly, I feel like, with sequels and things, sometimes it's... I try not to pit them against one another. I say, like, this is just, like, the continuous story. Like, not one is better than the other. This is just, like, one glorious... Well, so far, duology. Like, so far, there's only the 2 books, but I feel like I can't split them apart. It's a little bit like, Lord of the Rings, Fellowship of the Ring, Two Towers, Return of the King. This is what I'm, like, feeling. Like, you can't... I mean, you can if you want, but, like, I can't separate them. Like, this is just one long story for me, and... I just love it with everything I have, so I can't not...
I reject your answer.
No, I love them
We
equally.
pit books against each other in this house, and this is the winner.
Well, I'm outvoted, I guess, so...
So, for anybody that needs a little refresher, even though this book literally just came out, we will give you a little refresher. Gavin.
Okay, so there is a lot that happens in this book, right? So I had to make sure that I kept a little bit of a list. Like, I have a full-on paragraph of a summary here. And because I want to get, like, every kind of... Well, I don't have subplots, but I have, like, the main things, right? So, in Amari and the Great Game, this incredible, beautiful book here, we have Amari, and it's going to be her first full summer as a junior agent, and she's going to be in the Bureau's summer camp, and she's now a bit like a celebrity. The Bureau have released footage of her fighting Dylan in the previous book, and it's kind of a way to make people see magicians in a better light, because obviously they've been not very well treated in the previous few books. Well, the previous book even. And pretty early on, there is an event. There is a magical freeze that freezes, well, seemingly everyone except Amari. And it's Amari's mission to try and find out what caused that. Otherwise, she is kind of condemned by everyone. She's already guilty before proven innocent. So because of the time freeze, Merlin, the Prime Minister, has also been frozen, and he's stuck in this freeze. So they get a new Prime Minister called Bane, and he's a wraith, I think. A wraith is probably better, yeah. And he is now in charge, and that's a bad thing because he doesn't want magicians to be part of society, and he brands them unwanted. And people are turning against Amari. She's banned from the summer camp, but things happen. We meet, I think her name was it Hawthorne?
Yes. Was it Hawthorne? Yeah, I think that's right.
Elaine Harlow, I think. Elaine Harlow.
Let me double check. Harlow sounds right.
I'm getting mixed up with Hawthorne. I don't know why I'm thinking
No,
Hawthorne,
well, it sounded right to
Harlow.
me. Harlow. Okay, you got it.
Derek Harlow. Perfect. So she meets her pretty early on, and she's the director of the Department of the Half-Truths and Cover-Ups. And she is she reveals that the Prime Minister wanted Amari to be back in the summer camp so that it would look good on him, essentially. It would look good on him. So she ends up going back to the Bureau of Supernatural Affairs. And at the same time, Cosmo, who is kind of running the League of Magicians, wants Amari to take the Midnight Throne and lead the magicians in this kind of like war against the regular supernaturals, I guess is what they're called in this. And Amari needs to think about it. She doesn't really want to do it because that's like a lot of responsibility on her shoulders and like a little bit too much for her to begin with. So she goes away. She does some missions. She, becomes kind of friends with Laura again, and as well as Elsie. Is it Elsie or Alise? I think I called her Alise in the previous video. I think it's Elsie. Alise? Elsie.
I guess it could be pronounced either way. I think it's Elsie.
I think it's Elsie. But she gets back to being friends with Elsie, and yeah, she goes on a mission. She meets Tristan or Trinian. Tristan Davies. Okay, she meets Tristan Davies, who is her kind of like competitor in the bureau now. Like he wants to be the best, and Amari is in the way of him becoming the best. So she has to like deal with a lot of the things that she dealt with in the first book, with people not wanting to be her friend or to even want to know her. And Tristan, he is not really that nice to begin with. So then finally we have Dylan. He escapes, and he is, the kind of competitor against Amari to get this Midnight Throne that Cosmo wanted either of them to have. So then Amari and Dylan, they have to compete against one another in the Great Game, and they're both given rings, and they have to compete, and whoever wins will get the other person's powers. So now Amari has even more on her plate, because now she doesn't want to give Dylan her powers, but she also doesn't really want to lead the magicians into a war. So, leading on from there, she's trying still to figure out what happened to the freeze, and turns out, should I just say what the freeze is? And like,
oh sure, yeah, that's fine.
Okay,
it's spoilers.
So, spoilers. Okay, so it turns out that Bane and Harlow were kind of in cahoots, and Merlin has the stone, which is what caused the freeze, in his hand. And Amari figures it out, but when she takes the stone away from him, the wraiths kind of come alive around him and become visible again, so she has to make sure that Merlin is still frozen, which means Bane and Harlow are still the Prime Minister by the end of this book. But also Dylan ends up winning against Amari for the ring, and he ends up getting Amari's powers at the end of this book. So now Harlow has the bureau, she has the entire kind of magical world at her fingertips, and Dylan has, the League of Magicians. He has her powers. So that is like a pretty long-winded summary. I think that's kind of the main things that happened. But there's so much more. There's so much, yeah.
It's a chock full book.
Honestly, I was trying to, when I was reading it, I was like trying to make notes of every kind of point. And I was just like, I can't, there's so much. This is a jam-packed sequel.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Amber, Alise, you were going to say something right before we went into the summary.
The world building was so much better in this book, 100%. And you could just tell, and that makes sense with what Gavin said in the other video about, which I didn't know that this was the author's debut novel, the first book. So you can tell that he became such a stronger writer in the second book. I mean, the characters and kind of breaking them down better. The actual beginning, we were slower. We got slower into everything, and it allowed for more of a buildup. And so I felt like I was able to just really soak in a lot more of the details. It still moves relatively quickly, and I don't know if that's just because I'm new to fantasy that I'm getting used to that. But oh my goodness, I loved it. And it was so easy to just engulf myself in this book. I even read it in a day. Well, I read 2 chapters the night before, and then I read it all today and the rest of it today, because it was so easy to read. It was so fast to take everything in. And of course, the first book will have a special place in my heart, because that's where we first were introduced to Amari in this amazing world and character. So obviously, like, there's something in the first book that the other books going forward won't be able to replace. But as far as the story itself, this was 100% stronger, and I loved it so much.
Sorry, I was going to say I agree with that because at the very start of this book, I feel like this book does such a great job at like the world building. So when you get to the start of this book, you can really see that I think Baby Austin is having more fun with his world that he's building. There was a line about gargoyles and how they're tricksters and they kind of like to pull faces at you when your back's turned. And that's like something like in the real world where you're kind of like, oh, do gargoyles actually do that? Like, can they do that? It's a bit like, you know, toys coming to life in Toy Story, and you have like little touches of that in like Amari and the Great Game, where you kind of see the world really coming alive, and it's straight away. It's like pretty much straight away you get the world, you know, opening up even more, and that's what I love about sequels in general. So I think Baby Olsen definitely improved in that too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Did you say in your interview with him, is it right that he made the world first and then Amari just kind of dropped into it?
I think he always had, I remember he was talking about when he was a kid, or like, he was like in school, he would write stories where there were horror stories actually, and he would write about his classmates and they would all read it, and he would kill off his classmates one by one in these like horror stories. And like he was getting like this really great passion for like storytelling, and it was like that kind of storytelling aspect that he just wanted to tell a story. But then it was like just the Amari, like the character just popped into his head, and I think he had the kind of Men in Black kind of, he always wanted to do a story like that, and that kind of just like it just fit. I think he just had like a lot of elements that just fit together, and it built Amari up. So yeah, I think Amari came first, but he always had the world in the back of his mind.
Gotcha. I was just curious because I feel like he, like you guys said, he did such a good job of expanding the world. And I felt like he really took his time with that in the beginning of letting us see like the different club, like the club fair where you could see the different clubs that she could join. Yeah. And like the different agendas that they had and expanding. I think he did such a great job of really just taking his time, making the world bigger while still doing those internal conflicts that kept the plot moving too. Like, I don't think you mentioned this in your summary, Gavin, but the whole conflict of Alise going off to college early.
To Oxford,
and there was a big internal conflict there between them because she was excited, but she was nervous. She didn't want to leave Amari. Amari didn't want to be left because she was her safe haven. And they had that little friction between them, as well as, and this is one of the things that makes me love Amari so much, because there was a line, I wrote it down. You shouldn't have to give up on your dreams just because your best friend needs you too much. Like, that self-sacrifice that Amari gives to the people in her life is just so beautiful.
Yeah, and it's also like kind of, that's just like reminded me like the self-sacrifice that Amari's had to make. You know, she's a kid, yes, and she's got like in the first book she's trying to find her brother. In this one she has like everything get piled onto her, like everything she has to do. So with that touching moment between her and her best friend, you know, like I feel like with Amari and I want to say Elsie, they kind of that the embodiment of them two, I think, is kind of like, this is kind of Amari at her happiest, and like with her, and with stuff like saying like how much they love her, like how much they love each other even, and their kind of dynamic. It broke my heart even more to see that friction, but I know it's like because how old, I think they're 13 in this one. I think that's just like so, like, that's so teen, you know. You can really feel like the struggles of what a teenager goes through, but like you totally relate to that. I mean, you know, it's the prospect of like Amari losing her kind of anchor and somebody who's always been by her side since the beginning. So you say that, but you also say Amari be like, spread your wings like if you need to, but like she's upset about it and she's allowed to be upset about it. And it was, yeah, I love that line so much. I think I might have highlighted that too.
Yeah, and I feel like there's so much in their relationship, I think, where they just admire each other so much. She's always hyping up Alise for how smart she is and inventive she is, and then Alise is always like, but you're so brave, and you know, the dragon is learning bravery from her, and I just think that's so beautiful.
For sure. Elsie is so smart, and I love that we got to see actually the way that the author created these characters was really nice, because we didn't just see Amari as Amari. Like, yes, Amari is great, Amari is amazing, but Elsie is also very intelligent. She got into, what was the school that she got into? Oxford. She got into Oxford, and she has all these great abilities. She's like a lead in her department. She's developing so fast, and I like that. I like that it's not that she's just the sidekick, and that's even mentioned in the story that Amari tells her that Elsie says that Elsie is her sidekick or something, and Amari's like, you're not my sidekick. And she's not. She's her own boss. I absolutely love that. And I like that it's not just, we have a main character, but we also get to see the growth and the strong traits about our other characters, Elsie being one of them. And I love her. Yes, her transformation. She turned into the dragon. That was so, again, that goes back to how we got to see her develop and put her on the same level as Amari, because she is, and to see her struggle with that for years and finally not only do that but help save Amari and save, really, she's a big part of why the whole situation was saved, at least for the for the time being. And so I love that part, and I was so proud of her.
Yeah, it's kind of, we have Amari, but the secondary characters, and even then I don't feel like any of the other characters like Elsie are actually secondary. I think like Baby Olsen has created this like really kind of, like, I don't want to say like fleshed out, but like, because I don't know if that like embodies it very well, but like there are fleshed out characters all around Amari, and like, yes, Amari is the main character, but you see like Elsie have that. I think in the first book she was shunned for being like just like a half dragon. She can't even turn. Like, it's kind of the thing that she's looked down upon for. She has this cool thing, but she can't do it. And in the second book she does. And she's built up to that. It didn't come out of nowhere. We've been seeing her since the first book really develop and really come into her own. And again, I think that's because like her strong bond with Amari and like what they do for each other and their friendship and the love that they feel for one another is like the most empowering thing. And she literally becomes a dragon. So, and she even like, doesn't she like throw herself in front of Amari as well at some point? That's the best friend.
Another scene that I'm absolutely obsessed with is when Amari went on the podcast with Jaden, and yes, and he was like talking to her about standing up to your bullies and being brave and speaking out, and then she gets there and she's like, well, I guess now's my time. I was so proud of her for not only saying like, no, here's the truth of what's happening, but then also apologizing for allowing the situation to look like she supported banishing the undesirables. Is that what they were called? Was that the title that they were given?
Oh, the unwanteds.
Unwanteds.
Yeah.
Right. Like apologizing for allowing that perception to happen, calling out the terrible stuff that was happening behind the scenes. And then whenever Jaden told her that he thought Quentin would be proud of her, killed me. Absolutely killed me.
Same. That's what you always would want to hear, especially when you consider how much Amari loves Quentin and like how much she like holds him in such high esteem. To hear that from somebody who was close to Quentin as well is like the most reassuring and beautiful, like the most beautiful thing you can hear, especially since like Amari, Quentin and Jaden didn't have an easy childhood. They were absolutely like, they had the worst, like they had the absolute worst kind of bringing up, but they made the most of it. They had each other and they kind of see like where they've become, like where they are now. And even like Amari, like how intense she was of getting like Jaden to this like place, and like I think that was in the first book, she was like, she wants to like share that with him, and like Quentin always wanted to share that with him, and to see them where they are now is just, it feels proud. Like I feel proud of Amari, I feel proud of Jane, I feel proud of, it's like it's like passing on the pride, I guess, like, or just like passing on what they've like, because again Amari said that, I think it was in the first book as well, about Jaden doing things, or like he had money in things that weren't coming from like credible sources, and like he was getting mixed up with the bad things. but she knew he had potential, and that's exactly what Quentin saw in Amari. And we see what happens with that potential. They actually become something. And again, I think that's like a huge message to impart on children. Like, you know, some people might try and say that you're not worth it, or like you're not worth anything. But, you know, there will always be like somebody there to tell you, no, you are. And when you have somebody believe in you that much, which Amari did for Jaden, Quentin did for Amari, it's kind of like that circle, I guess, or, you know, passing on that belief in one another. Yeah. And then it just kind of, it boosts them up. And this is what happens when you actually believe in kids and what they can actually do.
Yeah. And that goes to, like I was saying, about all the characters really being able to shine in this story, and her brother included. It is crazy how, I think one of you said that earlier, we barely see him, but he has such a strong impact and hold on this story. And I'm thinking at this point that it would be really cool if the author actually, if we got the backstory of her brother and how he got to where he is, because his story is fascinating, and being able to see him grow up from where he did and become what he became, and how he got so powerful in that dynamic team that he was a part of, and then leading up to this part. I think that we should have that book, even though I want to go into the other books as soon as possible. But I think between the next book, we should get the backstory of the brother. I would devour that.
He's such a sweetheart, and getting to see how much Quentin has influenced people outside of just Amari, which we heard about in book 1, but we get to see it here. And it's just, I love Quentin. I barely have spent any time with him, and I love him so much.
Literally, his influence, it just knows no bounds. And yeah, with like Jaden, I think there was a moment with Harlow. Was it when she... I'm trying to remember everything now. I think it's when she tells everybody that they're not allowed to even interact with Amari. I mean, like, everyone's banned from speaking to her and stuff. But Jaden was like, hey, we grew up together. Like, I don't care what you say. Like, I'm gonna talk to Amari and stuff. It's like, yes, challenge her. Challenge the adult character who thinks they're right, you know? And it's just, yeah, he was so well done. I think we didn't get enough of Jaden in the first one. But in this one, I think we got, like... I would love more. I would always love more. I would love it if this book was 1,000 pages long. But like, we got, I think, enough to see that character development and to see where he will eventually end up going in the next one, which hopefully will be like a lot more as well.
Yeah, there's so many things that he tackles that BB Alston? Help me, Gavin.
I think it's Baby Alston.
Alston? Should I say Alston, not Alston?
I'm sure you can say it however you want.
I will not. I must honor a person's name. B.B. Alston does such an amazing job of doing, he does so much with his stories. You know, like if we're just talking plot, it's a very straightforward, very engaging, but very straightforward plot. But beside that, he's doing so many things with different characters and their individual struggles, with themes that he's tackling, with stuff that he's exploring. Like, he does so much with such a simple and easy to, like, you can just fly through these books and then come away with so much.
Yeah. And I think, especially with Director Van Helsing, he's like, you know not what to do as a parent when you kind of look at him and how he treats his children. Because and also just the way that the characters, like say Dylan, like when you think of Dylan as a villain from the first book and the way he develops in this one, is that, wow, there's a lot of unpacked things from that relationship between like parent and son that has kind of contributed to the way that Dylan is behaving now. And it's like, it's very, I guess, internal, very to do with like Dylan and like his mental health, or like what he's going through as a person and what he wants to do and what he wants to change is again like scary. Like what I said in the first kind of episode talking about Night Brothers is that you kind of see from their perspective, you see from Dylan's perspective, you see, wow, this is actually like, you can kind of see like his point of view from where you're standing. So it's, yeah, like I love middle grade books that can really tackle stuff like that, but make it in a way that it still feels fantasy, it still feels like fantasy, but it feels like a reflection on us.
Talking about plot, we've talked a ton about characters, we've talked a bunch about themes. What did you guys think of the games?
I will say, I wish they were a little bit longer. I'm going to say that. But I love them. My favorite, though, had to be the one where they were looking back on, well, they were in moments where they loved where they were at.
The final
and
one?
They could, yes, and
Oh,
they
my
could possibly
goodness.
get stuck there.
You could choose to stay. You could choose to forget everything.
And why did, okay, I was kind of, I didn't know how I felt about this. I thought it was really sweet, but also like that showed how much Dylan loved Amari.
Yeah.
I did not, like he truly thought she was a friend.
Yeah.
And I also got chills whenever Amari was with her brother and her mom and Elsie, and she's just like, something feels wrong, but this is so nice. And then she
Yeah.
realizes, oh my gosh, I have to go. And they're like, no, stay. And she's like, this really does sound nice. I don't want to keep almost getting killed. Oh, that was,
It was
I love that
chilling.
thing.
It was
It was.
chilling scene. It was my favorite too. Like on the edge of my seat throughout that whole thing.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah. And it reinforces what we've said about, the characters, like, the way they're proud of each other. And, like, with Amari, like, you know what, part of me wanted her to stay and kind of be happy. Like, it's not what you want for your characters. I mean,
Yeah.
it wouldn't be good for her, of course. Like, it would not be good for her.
Or
but
for
like,
the world.
yeah, or the world, yeah. Like, everything would be content. But, like, then I'm like, but Amari's already having to sacrifice so much, you know? Like, she
Yeah.
deserves, like, this little piece of happiness. Obviously, thank God she didn't, like, go for it. But, like, yeah, I really enjoyed that, and I really liked the library, and I thought that was like really like creative, and I love the kind of action of that. I do love trials and competitions. I love that kind of plot element. We did get that in the first book as well, though, with like the tryouts and stuff. So I did feel like we kind of got the same kind of skeleton from
That's
the first
interesting.
yeah, with the second book out. So, like, as much as I still loved it, I was like, okay, I can see what we're doing here. We've got like the three kind of things happening again, but this
We
time takes
also
all.
had a betrayal in this book.
We had yes, we had betrayals, and you know, and I feel like I was trying to keep myself on alert because I knew with the first book I was probably the only one having the rug pulled out under me. So I was trying so hard. To make sure that I was paying attention to everything, and then I guess the Elaine and the Bane reveal wasn't as surprising to me, but I think Laura kind of betrayed Amari, but didn't as well.
Me
I'm trying to
too.
like work out that situation and like what her true motives were, and like is she like really out for herself, or like is she actually trying to help Amari?
I
Is
think
she
they're
trying
true
to protect-
friends.
I don't know.
I fully trust Laura.
Really?
And I do. Am I dumb?
I mean,
Go ahead, tell me
I'm
out.
still looking at her a little sideways. You know, I
Are
keep
you?
one eye open with her, but I get what you're saying. I don't get why she couldn't tell Amari this. Like, at least give me a warning. Even if it's like, you know what I
Sure.
mean? That part felt weird, but
That's a good point.
but I do get, I want to believe that she's genuine.
I think a big part of it is because after book one, in the end, when she saw how much the stuff that she was contributing to, you know, like her looking down on magicians and her picking on bullying Amari and everything that she was doing contributed to her brother, who she loved, keeping the biggest secret in the world from her. And so I was really hoping that that was going to be a massive slap in the face and completely make her look at herself in the mirror and say, look what I've done, you know? And so whenever she tried to apologize to Amari in the hallway and Amari cut her off, and when they started working nicely together and like all this stuff, I was just like, yes, this is what I want for her character. So I guess I just trust her a little bit, probably a little bit too much.
No, that's understandable.
I totally get that as well. I just think if everybody... I don't think like we're going to end this series with everybody being on Amari's side as much as I'd want that.
Sure.
And the more I'm thinking about the characters, like say like with Dylan, I feel
He's
like...
definitely ending on her side. He has to.
He has to. Like, that's my prediction. I just feel like not everybody's going to at the end. And I just feel like, who have we got left character-wise? Because
Sure.
obviously it wouldn't be Elsie, you know?
I
and
actually
like,
don't trust Maria.
Ooh.
Oh,
Ooh, that's
Quentin's,
interesting.
yeah, the other half of Vanquish.
okay.
Oh.
I don't know. I just feel like she's just like, she's so helpful. And
maybe that's the plot twist in book 3.
Maybe so.
Maybe I've called it.
I just feel like, I don't know. She's helping her around every corner. And there have been times where Amari is trying to do what's right. And then Maria's like, oh, but Quentin would want me to protect you. He wouldn't want me to let you do this. And I just feel like sometimes it feels like a little bit too hollow.
Okay.
So I'm a little bit sus of her.
Okay, I'm going to keep that.
And I also feel
Keep
like
one eye
she
open.
could have sold
Yeah.
Quentin out before book 1. You know what I mean?
We need to know more about that as well. I feel like what we need to learn more of is like the relationship between Maria and Quentin. And there's just so much more to unpack there, like what led to what happened to Quentin.
Right.
So
like they were really sus of, well, Amari was really sus of her at one point, and she was like, oh, Maria kind of betrayed Quentin, and, you know, Dylan didn't want to believe that, and I feel like maybe there's a little bit of truth to that.
yeah.
Well, now that
Potentially,
makes me
yeah.
want a story before we, even though I want this third book so bad, now I want a story of like Quentin's story
yeah.
up until when he's in his position now.
Like a
and
prequel.
I
we
would
got to,
take
yes, yes.
He definitely doesn't have enough on his plate, right? So let's just throw another book on his plate. He can write it real quick for us. Give it to us all early to read. Like tomorrow would be good.
Beta features. Cosmo and the League of Magicians, and I found that like such an, I don't know why, but I pictured it as kind of like, I know why, because it was like at the bottom of Loch Ness, wasn't it? Like that kind of whole thing was, I think the League of Magicians was like the bottom of Loch Ness or something. Like I love that. But with the League of Magicians, I'm just like, I don't really know if I fully trust them, especially because the way Cosmo kind of, well, he's the one who let Dylan escape the was it the bottomless depths? I feel like we need to see more of the actual people who make up the League of Magicians, rather than, because we had Cosmo kind of, I don't know, he definitely wanted kind of Dylan to be kind of ruler of the magicians by the end of it. So like he played Amari, but I'm just like, I don't know what to think about the League of Magicians. I'm a little bit.
I don't trust them at all.
Me neither. And it's Vladimir's throne as well, isn't it? Because that's like the Midnight Throne. It was Vladimir's who was one of the Night Brothers, right? So like, surely that can't be. I mean, I know like with the magicians, it's very, you do have the extreme magicians who like did really bad, evil things. But then you also have like really good magicians who don't. But like having that as the throne is just like, I feel like is so indicative of the fact that it's going to be corrupt. It's going to be dark. It's not going to be a good thing. So I'm curious to know like where the League of Magicians is going to play into this, and if this is even something that Amari even wants to like be a part of or like try to be a part of. I just feel like Amari's better off on her own, or like with her friends. And I feel like it's not just the supernaturals, the people who Harlow is kind of now going to be controlling, because she also has the power to control other people, is that I feel like Amari's going to have to fight the magicians. I feel like they're going to be corrupted, and I just feel like, I don't know, like, there's just no really big side to Amari. It's going to be Amari by herself with her friends, and two big forces coming at her. But yeah, the League of Magicians is interesting. I found that whole part interesting.
Yeah. It'll be interesting to see that flesh out more. Go ahead.
Did they have to? That was bothering me too, because I didn't even understand why. Because to get that crown, they had to follow Vladimir's rules or whatever, right? Or was that a choice? Were they choosing? Because Amari was saying on that final battle with Dylan, she was telling, what's the name of the leader of the League of Magicians?
Cosmo's the leader.
Yes, okay.
Yeah.
She was telling him, like, why do we both have to literally lose our powers or die? Like, why do we have to keep doing it this way? What's necessary?
Right.
That's what bothers me about him, because I'm like, Vladimir's no longer here. Moreau's no longer here. So why are we still doing it this way? Why are you so adamant about Dylan, who clearly has the same traits as them, leading? You're not, I get that we're in a hurry. I understand that, but you're literally doing everything that the people you're claiming you don't want to be like we're doing. So I'm with Gavin on that. I don't trust them either. Maybe Priya, was that her name? Priya, the singer?
Right.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, she may be the only one that I'm like kind of okay with, but as a whole, I don't really care for them.
Yeah, there might be a few like good ones in there. I think them kind of following archaic kind of rules, especially like following Vladimir's rules, is quite a, like a critique on like I guess people following these like governments or societies that kind of enforce these old and really like they no longer are fit for our world today, and like, it's kind of it's like that's like still oppressing so many people, and they need to like kind of change that, but like nobody really can. Well, Amari probably will. Hopefully, she has the power to do that. But yeah, I think it just like kind of reinforced the idea of archaic rules, kind of making sure that society stays the way it wants to via fear, rather than people getting any kind of idea of maybe trying to rise up against them, trying to fight against the system.
Yeah.
That's probably why I think maybe Baby Alston was maybe trying to do that.
No, that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense.
My daughter just woke up, so I have to wrap this up.
No problem.
We mentioned that we liked, or that the ending felt a little bit rushed, just like book 1 did. And while, yes, that is true, I loved seeing Quentin wake up and be there.
Yes.
It was so sweet. It was such a wholesome end.
Yes. No, that's true. I ended on a really positive note, whereas like, well, I mean, obviously there's like a lot of negatives as well.
Oh,
you know?
yeah.
But
there's a lot to clean
it's
up.
kind of, you only need like that little bit of hope to kind of continue forward, and Amari only ever needs like the smallest sliver of hope to overcome what's trying to keep her down. And I feel like the possibilities to come are just like boundless. So I love that moment too. Great ending. Great ending.
Yeah, her last line was like, "Let's go, we're ready for battle," and I'm like, "I am too. Let's go."
Yeah.
I'm just like,
Three's
Amari,
gonna be
have a
awesome.
break.
Yes.
Amari, have a break. Put your feet up.
Chill with your family a little bit, and then let's go.
Good point. Yeah.
No, but it's going to be so good for Quentin and her to fight side by side in book 3. I'm so ready for that.
Too.
Me too.
And I don't even know if it's going to be the final one either. Hopefully not. I want loads more.
Yeah. Good point.
Oh, yeah, I'll take more. I'll take a big old series. Yay! Okay, well, thank you guys so much for joining me. Again, their channels will be linked in the description, so please go check them out. Go subscribe. They have amazing content. I've been watching them both for a while now. And I guess we'll see you again soon.
Thank you so much for having us,
Yes,
Murphy.
thank you, Murphy. Bye.
Bye.
And thanks everyone for watching.
Thank you.
Bye.